Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great day. Lots of NHL news to discuss and lots of trade talks to get into despite not being near the trade deadline, but still great to discuss in the month of January. The trade deadline, I believe, is in March. But there's been rumors about Elias Pettersson, J.T. Miller going to other teams, and we discussed that on the show, plus a possible return for Chicago Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews, even though he probably won't re-sign with the Blackhawks anymore. But we could see other teams that he might return to if he does decide to continue playing in the NHL. And we got game recaps for you guys on the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So Connor Hellebuck, he made 26 saves in his 300th NHL win to get his 300th NHL win in the Jets' 5-2 win over the Nashville Predators. He is the fastest U.S.-born goaltender in NHL history to reach the 300th win milestone, and the league's third fastest overall behind Andrei Vasilevsky, who got it done in 490 games on November 14th, 2024, and Jacques Plante, who got it done on Christmas Day of 1962. Did it in 521 games. And the Jets not only give Connor Hellebuck his 300th NHL win, but they also ended their 3-game skid, and they moved to 28-12-2 of the season. Morgan Barron, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, Gabriel Vilardi, and Nino Niederreiter all scored for the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, Nino Niederreiter used to play for the Nashville Predators, so he scored against his former team. And for the Predators, Roman Josi, he had a goal and assist for a 2-point night in the loss. And Philip Forsberg also scored for Nashville in the loss. But bad news, though. Luke Evangelista and Steven Stamkos both left the game with injuries. Luke Evangelista left in the first period with a lower body injury. He returned briefly in the second, but did not play in the third. So no telling how long he's going to be out for. And Steven Stamkos left early in the second period, and he did not return to play in the third period. And UC Sauls, he made 26 saves on 29 shots faced in net. So obviously losing Steven Stamkos, losing Luke Evangelista, two great players for the Nashville Predators. Obviously tough, especially with the season that the Nashville Predators are having so far. So that's what makes it, somewhat worse. And with that loss, Nashville moves to 13-21-7 of the season. But good news, though, the Predators return home for the start of a 5-game homestand against the Washington Capitals Saturday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. The Jets continue their 8-game homestand against the LA Kings Friday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. All right, moving on to the Red Wings and Senators. So Patrick Kane, he scores the overtime game-winning goal in the Red Wings' 3-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. Scored 2 minutes and 21 seconds into overtime, and now it's a power play goal he scored in the win. And Detroit moves to 18-18-4 this season, so they're right at 500. They won 5 in a row, which is a season high for Detroit. And they're 5-1-0 on the Todd McLellan ever since he replaced Derek Lalonde on December 26th, which, of course, was the start of the World Juniors. Congrats to Team USA on winning gold medal, though. And the Red Wings, they are 2 points out of a wild card spot. And I'm telling you guys, that wild card in the Eastern Conference is tight. It is tight in there. So it is like a dogfight race in the Eastern Conference to get that wild card spot. But anyway, for the Red Wings, Dylan Larkin, he had a goal and assist to extend his point streak to 4 games. So 2-point night right there for the captain. Joe Veleno also had a goal in this game. And Alex Lyon, he stopped all 10 shots faced in the first period before leaving with a upper body injury. And Cam Talbot made 21 saves in relief. Both teams actually had 33 shots on goal in this game, so that's kind of impressive. For the Senators, Tomas Chabot and Brady Tkachuk scored for Ottawa, while Anton Forsberg made 30 saves in the loss. And the Senators finished their 9-game road trip 4-4-1. Of course, they had this long road trip because the World Juniors was taking place in Ottawa from December 26th to January 5th. So that's why they had this long 9-game road trip, but they finished it off on somewhat of a good note, and they moved to 19-17-3 of the season, and they are back at home Thursday to take on the Buffalo Sabres at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, and the Red Wings continue their 4-game homestand against the Blackhawks Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, where they look to extend their winning streak to 6 games, and it's always great to see Red Wings and Blackhawks play against each other, the rivalry between the two teams, and also Patrick Kane and Alistair Brinkets on the team facing off against the Blackhawks. Of course, they used to play for the Blackhawks, and Eric Gustafsson used to play for Chicago as well. So, of course, the Red Wings getting some of our Chicago players right there. All right, moving on to the Oilers and Bruins. So, Stuart Skinner, he makes 26 saves in the Oilers 4-0 shutout win over the Boston Bruins, and the Oilers moved to 25-12-3 of the season. They won 4 in a row. They won 7 of the past 9, and they also sweep their season series meets against the Bruins. Of course, they won 3-2 back at Rogers Place on December 19, and of course, recently they had a 4-0 shutout win over the Bruins. And Stuart Skinner technically was not awarded the shutout after being taken off the ice by a quote-unquote concussion spotter and missing the final 5 minutes and 25 seconds of the first period following collision with Bruins defenseman Nikita Zadorov, who was called for goaltending interference. I got this off of NHL.com, so that's what I saw on there. So he was replaced by Calvin Picker, who didn't face a shot on net, but Stuart Skinner eventually returned to start the second period. So I think both of them it says Stuart Skinner was not awarded the shutout alone. So I think between him and Calvin Pickard, both of those guys were awarded the shutout. Like they split it, basically. But for the Oilers, Adam Henrique scored twice in the win. Connor McDavid had a power play goal, and Victor Arvidsson had an empty net goal in the win. And for Boston, Jeremy Swayman, who will be representing Team USA for the 2025 NHL Four Nations Face-Off event coming up in February, he made 35 saves in the loss, and it's not been looking so great for the Boston Bruins as they have now lost 5 straight games, and they lost 6 of their past 7, and they moved to 20-18-5 of the season. But the Bruins are back at it in Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. The Oilers will continue their 4-game road trip in the Steel City against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, of course, are coming off of a 4-3 shootout loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets, but they face the Oilers Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So, of course, it will be Connor McDavid versus Sidney Crosby, who will be representing Team Canada for the 2025 NHL Four Nations Face-Off event. It's always great to see these two players go at it. Connor McDavid versus Sidney Crosby, 2 first overall picks in their respective drafts. Wish there could have been a Stanley Cup final match between the Oilers and the Penguins, but we all know the Penguins are not going to go to the Stanley Cup final. This isn't 2016. This isn't 2017 anymore. It's not even 2009. So, no, I'm not seeing Pittsburgh going to Stanley Cup final, but imagine a Stanley Cup final match between Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby. That would be unreal. All right, moving on to the Hurricanes Lightning. So Braden Point, he scored the game-winning goal with 52 seconds left in the third period to give the Lightning a 3-2 win over the Carolina Hurricanes, and so the Lightning end their 4-game skid, and they moved to 21-15-2 of the season. I know there were some people worrying, is the Lightning starting to fall off, or what's going on with Tampa? But I saw no concerns with Tampa because I knew they were still the team that I know they were when they had Steven Stamkos, and even when they don't have Steven Stamkos, they're still a great team. But I know Tampa fans don't like to hear that. But I believe you guys are still a good team without Steven Stamkos nonetheless. But the Lightning hold the first wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference with 44 points. And like I said before, when I was discussing about the Red Wings overtime win against the Senators, it is tight in the Eastern Conference. So, of course, the Lightning had the first wildcard spot with 44 points. Blue Jackets with 42 points. Of course, they had a 4-3 shootout win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think Dmitry Voronkov scored the shootout game-winning goal in that game. Pittsburgh is tied with Columbus for 42 42 points. The Senators have 41 points. They're coming off of a overtime loss to the Red Wings. Canadians with 41 points and the Red Wings with 40 and so forth. So it is tight in the Eastern Conference as those teams try to get a wild card spot, at least, if not finishing in the top three, to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, we all saw the Red Wings being also close to making the Stanley Cup playoffs last season, but of course, I think the Flyers needed to win that game against Washington, and of course, the Capitals have won against Philly, therefore taking that wild card spot in the Eastern Conference last season. But for the Lightning, Brendan Hagel, Nick Paul also scored in the win for Tampa. And Andre Vasilevsky made 30 saves for the Lightning. And Jordan Stahl, he had a goal and assist for the Hurricanes for a 3-point night. Andrei Snechnikov also scored for Carolina. And Pierre Kochetkov, he made 31 saves on 34 shots faced in net. And Carolina is 3-2-1 in their past 6 games, and they moved to 24-15-2 of the season. The Hurricanes head home for the start of a 3-game homestand against the Toronto Maple Leafs Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That game will air on Hulu and ESPN+. The Lightning will play the Bruins Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. These two teams will meet again in Boston Tuesday, January the 14th. So just 5 days after they play in Tampa, they will head to Beantown to face each other in Boston. And speaking of the Leafs, I know I kind of talked about them when the Hurricanes were going to face them Thursday. But the Leafs, on the other hand, they're coming off of a 3-2 win over the Philadelphia Flyers. Matthew Knies scored the game-winning goal in that game, and the Maple Leafs moved to 27-13-2 of the season. They won 5 in a row, and they sweep the home-and-home series against the Flyers, both by a score of 3-2. Of course, they won 3-2 in overtime on Sunday, with Morgan Riley scoring the game-winning goal in that game. And these two teams will face off each other again on March 25th in Toronto. Austin Matthews, he had a goal and an assist in the win. This is the 200th multi-point game for Austin Matthews in his 589th career game. Fastest by United States born player in NHL history. He has 7 points in 3 games since he returned from an upper body injury. Of course, he missed the last 6 games because of that. So 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points in 3 games in his return. John Tavares also scored in the win for Toronto, and Joseph Wall made 30 saves in net for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And for the Philadelphia Flyers, Ivan Fedotov, he made 14 saves in the loss, and Travis Konechny has scored twice for Philly. And the Flyers continue their 4-game homestand against the Dallas Stars Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Of course, Dallas is coming off of a 5-4 comeback win in overtime against New York Rangers. Jamie Benn scored the game-winning goal in that game, and they moved to 25-13-1 of the season. But they face Philadelphia Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Maple Leafs, of course, will be in Carolina Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, which that game will air on Hulu and ESPN+. All right, possible return for Jonathan Toews. So I know everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's been discussing about it. Could we see a possible return for Jonathan Toews? So if you guys don't know, Jonathan Toews was on his healing journey in India. But there are reports going out that he has resumed skating and he is back in action on the ice. But I think Jonathan Toews will return based on his health and if he's ready to compete at this NHL level, because of course it's not the 2010s anymore. It's a whole new league, whole new bunch of players in the league. So this will be a return based on his health and if he's ready to compete again. But like I said, he's resumed skating. He's back in the States now. It's not in India anymore. And he could be nearing the NHL return, according to what I saw from a quote that he said in GQ magazine. But with that being said, these are my top teams that could be a great fit for Jonathan Toews because, of course, he isn't going to resign with the Blackhawks. I think they said that after his last game, which was against the Philadelphia Flyers in 2022-23 season. But my top teams that Jonathan Toews could be a great fit for is the Winnipeg Jets. So, of course, Jonathan Toews is from Winnipeg, so he could play for his hometown Winnipeg Jets. And, of course, the Jets have lacked a true veteran leader since Blake Wheeler's departure, and Jonathan Toews can fit that role right there. He could play third-line center, maybe, for the Winnipeg Jets. And that will provide depth and experience for a team that's trying to go all the way to the Stanley Cup final because, of course, we've seen the Jets be eliminated in the first round the past, couple times. And most recently against Colorado in the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs, and 2023 against Vegas. So they're having and then I think one time we saw them got eliminated in the Western Conference Finals to the Golden Knights in 2018, and the first round exit to the Blues in 2019. So this is a team that's trying to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and possibly break that Canadian Stanley Cup drought. And adding Jonathan Toews could be that great option. Number 2, the Colorado Avalanche. So depth addition. The Avalanche could benefit from Jonathan Toews' playoff experience to strengthen the center depth. And, of course, the Avalanche are looking to win another Stanley Cup. I know they recently won in 2022 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Jonathan Toews, I would love to see him win another Stanley Cup, even if it's with another team. And the Avalanche are certainly looking like a cup contender for Jonathan Toews to join. So I would love to see Jonathan Toews in Colorado playing for the Avalanche. I think that would be a great fit for him. I think he could be like either second or third line center for Colorado. Number 3, Detroit Red Wings. So we could see a reunion with Patrick Kane. Imagine that. I know Blackhawks fans may or may not like that, considering their top 2 star players that play for them are now on the Detroit Red Wings. I don't think this will sit well with Blackhawks fans, but as a Blackhawks fan myself, I kind of would love to see that reunion with Patrick Kane. And, of course, the Red Wings have some younger players like Lucas Raymond and Morris Seider, and Jonathan Toews could mentor them and be a veteran for those young players. And, of course, the Red Wings are looking to get back into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and his veteran leadership will fit just that. Of course, like I mentioned before, the Red Wings was so close to making it to the Stanley Cup playoffs last season but fell short. And then another team that I think he would be a great fit for is the Minnesota Wild. So another playoff contender team right there. They are coming off of a 6-4 win over their Central Division rivals, St. Louis Blues. And I think Jonathan Toews could be a great fit for the Minnesota Wild. And pairing Jonathan Toews with Captain Jerry Spurgeon could create a strong leadership team in that locker room. So Jonathan Toews and Minnesota Wild would love to see it, but I know many fans and analysts aren't anticipating that he could go to the Minnesota Wild, but this is something that I would love to see, another cup contender, not a cup contender, a playoff contender team for Jonathan Toews. And then the last team I would like to see him go to is the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he could play third line center for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, of course, Maple Leafs, as you guys all know, they struggle in the playoffs, can't even get out of the first round. I know they got out of the first round. Was it 2023? They got out of the first round 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs, but the majority of the time they struggle in the playoffs. And he can be great on the penalty kill for Toronto, so his defensive skills and penalty kill expertise will improve Toronto's depth on special teams. So I could see Jonathan Toews going to Toronto, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're watching on Spotify, leave a comment down below. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, I don't think you can make comments on there, but I think you can make comments on Spotify. I do have comments open on there, and you guys can also comment down if you're watching this on YouTube. If you think Jonathan Toews should go to one of those teams I just said. So Wild, Maple Leafs, Avalanche, Red Wings, and Winnipeg Jets. Those are my top teams that I could see Jonathan Toews going to if he decides to return. All right, so speaking of players on the move, J.T. Miller, there were rumors about J.T. Miller trying to go back to the New York Rangers, but I think the Canucks or Rangers, don't know who, but I think either Vancouver or New York rejected that trade. I think the Rangers were trying to get J.T. Miller from the Vancouver Canucks for Mika Zibanejad, and the Canucks had rejected that trade. He has 29 points in 29 games played this season for the Canucks, so 8 goals, 21 assists for 29 points in 29 games played this season for the Canucks. Here are my top teams that he could go to. So the Rangers could try again going after J.T. Miller. Of course, he did play for the Rangers for 2012 to 2018, despite the Canucks rejecting the trade. But they might have to spice up the deal for this trade to happen. I mean, Mika Zibanejad apparently isn't going to be enough for Vancouver. So they might have to spice up the deal to get J.T. Miller from the Vancouver Canucks. And number 2, the Chicago Blackhawks. So the Blackhawks are in a rebuilding phase, as you all know, and they could benefit from J.T. Miller's experience and leadership to mentor younger players. I know they have some veterans on the team already, like Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, and other veterans like that. They could use some money in J.T. Miller as well. And Chicago has the financial flexibility to accommodate J.T. Miller's contract and making this a possible potential trade. Another team I would like to see J.T. Miller on is the Colorado Avalanche. So the Colorado Avalanche, are they a wild card spot in the Western Conference? I think they're third place in the Western Conference, either them or Dallas. But Avalanche looking like a strong playoff contender. The Canucks are, winning games and losing games, so it's like a roller coaster for them. So they're having trouble finding their consistency, and the Avalanche could be a great option for J.T. Miller to go to. Could be a valuable addition to increase their depth and scoring options. And number 4, the New York Islanders. So possibly they might lose key players like Brock Nelson in free agency, and the Islanders might go after J.T. Miller. I think if the Islanders do decide to, if they are going to lose Brock Nelson, or if they don't want Brock Nelson anymore, they could trade him and Noah Dobson to the Vancouver Canucks, probably throw in a draft pick deal for J.T. Miller. They probably might have to give up a lot to get J.T. Miller on the team, but we'll just have to see. And then the last team I think he'll be a great fit for is the Boston Bruins. So there were recent reports indicating that the Bruins have engaged in trade talks with the Canucks, potentially involving J.T. Miller, and his scoring ability could provide the Bruins with additional offensive depth as they aim for a deep playoff run. I know this is a team that has lost 5 straight and 6 of their past 7 games, but adding J.T. Miller could be a great spot. Could be a great spot for the Bruins. And the Bruins have already lost players to the Canucks before, like Jake DeBrusk signing with the Canucks in free agency, and then the Canucks losing Danton Heinen and Elias Lindholm in free agency to the Boston Bruins. So this could possibly work. All right, and another Canuck that possibly might be traded come trade deadline, Elias Pettersson. So there are rumors saying that Elias Pettersson might get traded by the Vancouver Canucks. He has 28 points in 34 games played this season, so 10 goals, 18 assists for 28 points in 34 games. Top teams he could go to: Buffalo Sabres. Why this works: the Sabres have a young, talented roster, as you guys all know, and I kind of said this before, led by Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, and Owen Power. And adding Elias Pettersson would solidify the top 6 and push them into serious playoff contention. I think they're last in the Eastern Conference. They have 35 points, and they're 7 points out of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. But adding Elias Pettersson could really give this team a bunch of wins to get them back into a wild card spot and the playoff spot. I know they lost 13 straight, and then they went on like a 4-game winning streak after they lost 13 straight, and then somehow they're still last in the Eastern Conference right there. Trade considerations for the Sabres. So Buffalo has a lot of top prospects on the team, like Matt Savoy and Yuri Kuric, and high draft picks. So they might have to give up a lot to get J.T. Miller on the team. Number 2, Chicago Blackhawks. So I would love to see Elias Pettersson playing for the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, they're trying to build around Connor Bedard and could use another elite forward like Elias Pettersson for their rebuild. And that will be one of the best duo. I know Connor Bedard and Tyler Bertuzzi have been on fire for the Blackhawks. That could be a great duo, but adding Elias Pettersson could make it an even better duo. I mean, that can be a great top 6 right there for Elias Pettersson. The Blackhawks, they have plenty of prospects to possibly get this one up. They could throw in Kevin Kosinski. They could throw in a high draft pick. I don't want them to trade Frank Nazar. I don't think they're going to trade Frank Nazar, though. But this is another team that's probably going to have to give up a lot to get JT Miller on the team. And then another one, New York Islanders. So the Islanders, they're looking to add high-end offensive talent for their team, and adding Elias Pettersson will give them a dynamic top-line center who could thrive alongside players like Matthew Barzal and Bo Horvat, who they got from the Canucks before. I see a trade involving John Gabriel Padro and Noah Dobson to get this one up. They might throw in Brock Nelson, not 100% sure, but throwing in John Gabriel Padro, Noah Dobson, probably a draft pick for JT Miller could be somewhat possible for Elias Pettersson. And another team, Detroit Red Wings. So, of course, the Red Wings are looking to add more offensive talent to the team in order to get back into the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2016. And Elias Pettersson could thrive alongside players like Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin for their offensive depth. And the Red Wings might have to trade away Marco Kasper to make this offer. And probably other draft picks. Not sure. It depends on their salary cap. And then the last team I think will be a good team for Elias Pettersson, the New York Rangers. So, of course, the trade for JT Miller didn't work out so well. Elias Pettersson could be a player for the New York Rangers to get. And his skill set would complement their top players like Artemi Panarin. I know the Rangers tried to trade away Mika Zibanejad. Could throw him in a trade again. And, of course, Adam Fox. He would probably play. Well, he's a defenseman, but I think Elias Pettersson will be well playing with Artemi Panarin and Adam Fox. And of course, the Rangers are, struggling this season. They're looking to make some moves come trade deadline, but they will need to probably trade high-end prospects like Brendan Othmann or like Will Cooley, or throw in like younger players like Alexis Lafreniere. I know he had a 2-goal game in the Rangers' last outing against the Dallas Stars, but maybe could throw him in at the trade deadline. They already traded Capo Kakko to the Seattle Kraken, who I had the chance to, go see in person for his debut with the Kraken when the Kraken were facing the Blackhawks at the United Center back in December. So the Rangers could be on the move to trade Alexis Lafreniere as well. All right, NHL games on the slate for today. So there's only 4 games on the slate, with the Vancouver Canucks taking on the Washington Capitals in D.C. at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. This is the first meeting of the season between the two teams. They will face off again on January 25th. And then we got the Colorado Avalanche taking on the Chicago Blackhawks at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. This will air on TNT and HBO Max. This is the second game of 4 meetings this season. The Blackhawks won the first one back on October 28th by a final score of 5-2. They will face each other again on March 10th in Denver and on April 2nd in Chicago. And then we got the Florida Panthers taking on Utah Hockey Club for the first time ever. This will be at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So following after that Avalanche and Blackhawks game on TNT and HBO Max, we'll see the Panthers taking on Utah Hockey Club. And these two teams will meet again on March 28th in Sunrise, Florida. And then last game of the night, Calgary Flames taking on the LA Kings at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. Second of 3 meetings this season. The Flames took the first one back on November 11th by a final score of 3-1. Calgary is, of course, playing a back-to-back set. They won 4-3 in overtime in Anaheim. Jonathan Toews scored the game-winning goal in that game. And these two teams will meet again this Saturday on January 11th. So just 3 days after they play each other, they will face each other again this Saturday in Calgary. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. God first as always. Be blessed. And I'll see you guys Friday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.